All right, I think we're live.
Yes. We always manage to make that happen every week. Yeah. It's good. All right. We've had some breakthroughs this week.
Yeah. We've got some stuff done.
We got some stuff done. I think people don't realize just how tricky it is to get to this part of an offer. And I think what we're talking about is like, I think the easier part is defining what's happening inside your offer. Mm-hmm. But then what we've been sort of circling the wagons on for quite some time now is how we're messaging it, right? Yeah. How we talk about the benefits. And I think people, they kind of default to like sort of bigger, lofty statements, but getting to that real heart, that distillation, you think it's going to be easy, but it's actually really challenging. Yeah. And I think this was the thing that we kept getting sort of stuck on in terms of messaging was like, okay, like there's all these outcomes, but then what really are we trying to do? And then it took till yesterday for us to get really crisp on that. Yeah. So if you want to talk a little bit about where we got to, why, and I think one of the interesting parts is that this has been in you for a while, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm trying to think if I should start with the end or start at the beginning. So what the offer is going to be about is helping clinicians to design the next stage of their career, design a customized career for them so that, and then just give them a plan for getting to that next stage and help them to create a portfolio of experiences and even just do some experiments to figure out which direction is right for them. And really where it started was this broad talk about leadership. And so I was kind of just generally dancing around this whole idea of, you know, you can be a leader, you can make a bigger impact on your caseload and the students that you serve. And it just felt very vague. It felt vague to me. It was hard for me to explain what it was, even though I know what I'm actually helping people do. I know what my strategies are. I know potential ways that it could go for people, but it was hard to really boil it down to that one clear thing. And I kept talking about these general, and I've heard of somebody use this term before, platitudes like feel more empowered, make a bigger impact, you know, feel more aligned. But that's not really, that's what you get from the result. That is something that we need to talk about, but nobody actually really knows what that means. And I think that people want to actually know what that means because it's different for different people. And they want to know if your offer is going to be what that means to them. So, you know, and I think when you're talking about being empowered and being aligned, like I have a friend who does work with people, teaching them how to start a private practice. That is very clear, and they could feel aligned and empowered while they're working on a private practice, but she's very clear on what she helps people to do. And she talks about that. But at the same time, people have to know what she's actually teaching them to know if that's going to feel aligned for them.
Yes.
Because that might not be the right choice for them. Maybe it could be something else. And what I'm going to do is help people figure out what option is for them, because a lot of times it's kind of a hybrid thing. It's like a hybrid model, and they have to figure out what that even looks like for them.
And it's not just like, to me, I like the ring lights in my glasses. To me, it's not just like the career. It's more like, what does this next phase look like for you? Because the people that are going to be in this program are the ones who are like, hey, I think I can do more. I think that there's some path for me here, right? And it's and I like, the reason that I shy away from the idea of talking about it as career development is because that often means like, well, what qualifications do I need and that sort of thing. What you're talking about is like, look, this journey is one that I've taken already. And I went through this whole process of figuring this out myself because I just like I wasn't fulfilled where I was, or I just knew that there was something more for me to grow into. And
Yes.
what you are teaching, or what you are encouraging people to develop into in this program, is like all this foundational stuff that needs to be in place before you decide that, this is your path. And then that means I want to take some more education, or I want to do qualifications, or I want to do something else, or private practice, whatever it is.
Yeah.
This is not about teaching those, like teaching the qualifications. This is about helping people build a foundation that's going to help them be successful no matter which of those paths they take.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, how do you break that down? And I would love to know a little bit more about, like, you knew what you wanted to include and how you wanted to design this program, but the why, I think, is what's important.
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about the program or the live event
Yeah.
leading up to the program?
Okay, so we've got a live event leading up to the program, but I want to back in from the program. So
Yeah.
you made some decisions around how this program is going to look and be designed.
Yes.
For some very specific reasons. And I think that's what I really want to hear more about. And then how did the live event kind of evolve from there?
Yeah. So the specific pillars that I have in the program itself are focused around service delivery design, productivity, leadership and reform, and evidence-based practices. And then under evidence-based practices, a big portion of what that covers is surrounding things like executive functioning, even though it's going to be dynamic and ongoing, but that's kind of the core, one of the core tenets that's included in there right now. And the reason that I thought of it that way, and the reason that I would have people start with service delivery design, is that many times people are kind of thinking of themselves in this like very narrow lens of what they do as a clinician, when really, if they actually want to make a bigger impact on the way things are done, both just on their caseload to make sure that their clients get this nice continuum of support across settings, they have to think about what's going on in the big picture. And so, in order for them to make good decisions about what they need to do in therapy, they have to kind of zoom out and almost take this leadership type of role, thinking more along the lines of the big picture of what the student is or the client is getting within the system. And then they have to just make sure that the client or student gets that. And if you just focus on what do I do when I have someone in front of me, and just think of yourselves as I'm the person who, pulls kids or groups out and works on these certain skills, and you don't think about expanding beyond that, you don't make as much impact. And so that means that you have to kind of coordinate with other people and do this kind of a leadership role. And what that enables you to do is, number one, right now, make a bigger impact on the kids currently on your caseload, but also it gives you these experiences that are more like leadership experiences that position you as this person who's kind of a go-to person. And then you get to do these other things, that could involve like training other people, developing tools and systems that you can use to share knowledge and create resources in your facility and your community. And when you think bigger about that, it could potentially open up other opportunities, other positions, and kind of launch that next stage of your career. So it's something right now to help, but also something that could launch you to that next stage. And that's why I start with service delivery. You look like you were going to say something.
No, I'm sitting here just going like, oh, thank God. Like,
yeah.
You're so clear on this now.
Yeah. So, and the other thing that I have had a challenge with communicating before is that when I did this just for SLPs, number one, I was only talking to SLPs, and I really felt that I needed to talk to not all, but a larger range of practitioners, because there's all this overlap in scope and just so many nuances, and everybody needs to really work together. And there's not always this clear, everybody has their thing that they do that's their thing, but there's a lot of overlap. I really think that everybody needs to think bigger like this, and they need someone on their team to start doing it. I don't care if it's the SLP, the social worker, the psych, whoever. I have a mission to get this done. So that's part of it. But one of the things that comes up, or that has come up with SLPs, is that it feels like these things, like doing extra trainings and, finding time and all of this to collaborate with teachers, it feels like extra stuff, and it gets put on the back burner, because technically speaking, you could show up at your job and just do your sessions and not do this other stuff. And you could keep doing that day in and day out and just sort of coast along, and always had this feeling of like, I should be doing something more, but I don't know what to do, and I'm in the weeds. And so the next pillar is about productivity and developing assets that help you to buy back your time. Because what that does is that you need to create this space to be able to think creatively and come up with these bigger projects. And if you do start doing these things and realize like, hey, I want to start specializing, I want to go take some additional certification, and maybe I use that to just, go work at some more specialized setting, or start seeing clients on the side because I have this area of specialization, and eventually start a private practice. Or maybe they decide that they want to start teaching adjunct at a university, or that they want to, start a consulting business, or do some kind of administrative role or something like that. That takes work and time and energy. I did that. I was getting my doctorate while I was working full time. I had to be really mindful of my time, and I had to put those long-term projects in first. And a lot of times people don't do that. So the first thing I have people do is create the space so that they can start to do that more creative, innovative work. So that's why pillar number 2 is about productivity. And I have a whole protocol that I use and I teach people. And there's all kinds of different examples of how you can use it, both now and to kind of launch to the next stage of your career. And then the other pillars are even more dynamic, meaning that I'm going to be having, I'm going to be creating content, or I'm going to be having ongoing discussions about them in the community. So obviously we have evidence-based practices where, I do want to teach people to be good consumers of information and have some ongoing discussions with some specific, experts and topics. But then really the glue that's going to hold everything together is the pillar on leadership. And this is all of these other high level skills that I think we were talking about yesterday, that they sometimes don't, when you're in a clinical field, you're learning very much about how to be a therapist, and very much learning technical skills, which are very important, but there's so many other things that are going to have a bigger impact on your success in your career, and just the impact that you make with the services that you do. And they're often not taught in a lot of these pre-service trainings for a lot of these clinical fields, like knowing how to sell and market your services, knowing how to handle these really difficult, collaborations and communications with parents and other people that you're working with, knowing how to conduct a training, knowing how to do a professional development for a group of people to try to share the knowledge that you have with others. Even just like, I wrote an online course, and that's what I did. That was what my next stage of my career was. A lot of the things that I did for that, I had to learn as I went. And so there's just a lot of different skills that went into all of that are things that you need in order to be successful in your career, in order to actually make change happen in your community, in your facility. They go beyond the technical clinical skills. And like I said, all of those things are really important, but they're not the only thing. And so that's really sort of the glue that holds it together for how the roundtables are going to happen in the group itself.
And what's so cool, the reason I'm sitting here smiling is because, like, you've never spoken so clearly about this program before, because now it all sort of comes together, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And like, you knew that there were reasons why you've designed it in the way that you did. We just needed to pull it together in that bigger statement. And that's what happens, right? That's what happens. I've got 4 clients going through the same process right now. And it's, it's the hardest part. It's like, how
Mhm.
do we distinctly distill the, like, what it is we're doing?
Yeah.
We can get our benefit statements, and like, these are all true, right? It's not untrue that as an outcome of the work that they're doing, they're gonna feel more ownership over their work. They're going to feel a little more empowered. They're going to have strategies to think differently and approach some of the constraints that are real out there in the world, maybe differently or maybe more effectively. Those things are all true, but that none of those are the key, like, reason for this program to exist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exciting. I like this. And it's going to inform all of the copy that gets written and all of the messaging that gets put out there. And I think you're going to get some questions as to why you're building a program for multiple practitioners, because I don't know how common that is. It seems like in this field, like, a lot of, the SLPs stay together and the PTs stay together and what
Yeah.
have you.
Some of the time. It
Yeah.
kind of depends. But there are certain areas where there are certain tactical things that do apply to people across disciplines, but they're very specific and tactical about intervention techniques or therapy techniques. So the autism community, for example, OTs, special ed teachers, speech pathologists, social workers, a lot of those strategies are kind of overlapping in scope.
Yeah.
Executive functioning is another example. And the reason that I pulled that one out is because it's this layer that goes over all the other skills, like literacy, functional skills, language skills, social communication, basic taking care of your basic needs. That's one of the things that sort of is over all of them. That's why that was the one specific, more tactical thing that I included. But literacy is another example where, and I say that because that's my area of tactical expertise, is that there are, SLPs, linguists, special ed teachers, reading specialists, there are others that have this cross-disciplinary thing, but it's around a specific tactical area. It's not the same thing as what I am doing. So yeah, and there's a couple, maybe a couple here and there, but not in the same way. It's usually more about the population that you're treating that maybe has some overlap.
Yeah. And one of the other things that I think was really, like, was a necessity for you when you were designing this program, was that this becomes more of like a collaborative learning environment, in the sense that you're facilitating and you're bringing these topics to light, but you're also bringing in people who are experts in their field and experts in each of these topics. And like, you're as inquisitive as the members of your program are going to be. This isn't like Karen the expert talking down to to a group. And that just was like, really, I think that was a really important part of the design of this program.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously I do have a lot of topics that I know about, and I'll have plenty of opportunities to share that, but it's not about, me as the guru.
No, we both know that's
just not
that's not your style.
Yeah.
And I think that this is going to allow you the opportunity to, because, on the business side of things, I'm a huge advocate of people designing businesses around themselves, right? Like, what is it that they really desire and how do they want to grow? And I think one of the really important things for you too is that this gives you a container to continue doing some research. I mean, you're like a research oriented, kind of academically oriented person. And so this program is actually going to give you that opportunity to, dive back into research and dive back into some writing and connect with some more like intellectual people. And I think the quality of what you're bringing to this program is going to be really like high, right?
Yeah. That's the plan.
Okay. So we're doing a live event in a couple of weeks, a few weeks.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's already September 1st. Oh man.
I know.
Whew.
What the heck? This summer was just like, what?
Yeah.
What happened?
But it's ongoing. So it's not like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It won't be, but it'll be there.
Yeah. So what's the thinking behind the live event? I think the idea was to start bringing some of this content and these ideas to your audience. And let's talk a little bit about why you chose to design the live event in the way that you did, and what it's gonna how it's going to serve all the people in your audience, and how it relates to the program itself.
Well, I really like to look back on things that moved me and inspired me and got me to act, because, I know that some people say, like, you have to just sell something that you would have bought or that you would have, wanted to experience. But I don't know, like, I just can't really get excited about anything if it's not something that I would want to participate in. And one of the best things that I participated in, actually, in my own journey, that is kind of what I'm teaching people how to do, which was when I was figuring out what my next stage to my career was. And I decided to go with an online business that focused on training. I did kind of an interactive event where the actual live event there were some presentation type things, but it was very interactive. And we actually had to do an exercise where we had to design our business idea. And what that did is that it makes it tangible. It's interactive. You're thinking, you're doing things. And I think a lot of times when you're just talking at people and you're not allowing them to process, it's really not sinking in. And when you're thinking about designing things like this and asking people to think creatively and innovatively, you have to actually start doing something in order to pull things out, which is kind of what we've experienced with this whole launch process. So I wanted to have something interactive that allows people to craft their dream career, ideal next move in their career, and to start envisioning that, and to take them through the stages of figuring out how that could look for them, so that they're excited about moving towards that next step. Because really, you have to get clear on that, or at least start to really feel that this is possible in order for you to take those next steps. I just remember like going through all of these really vague, find your mission, alignment, blah, 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 personal development stuff for years before I actually went through an exercise that made it tangible for me. So I want to make it tangible for them, but I also want to make it customized for them. So the whole process is going to help them to go through some self-discovery about how they, their skills, obviously taking their specific discipline into account, whether they're an OT, SLP, PT, social worker, psychologist, whatever their discipline is, thinking about the traditional things that they would do in their role, but also thinking a little bit more flexibly about it, like pulling out some of those skills that maybe a lot of people don't realize that they do, or things that they could do that they think that they should be doing that aren't currently being done. So thinking about that, thinking about the people that they like to work with, both the clients they like to work with, the coworkers, the types of other people they want to collaborate with, the values that are important to them, thinking about their actual work habits that they like doing. And then also thinking about those other skills and preferences, things that they like to do that aren't just clinical, like aren't just like, I'm sitting here working on vocabulary because I'm a speech pathologist, more like, I like to do research and analysis, or I like to pull people together in a community, or I am really good at talking people through conflict and, facilitating discussions to help people create a game plan or something like that. Some of those other skills that are transferable and related to their current setting, but could be applied to other settings, and really getting clear on their mission. And the other thing that I wanted to kind of talk them through was just their kind of the qualities of the work that they like to do, and not to say like I have to have it this way, I have to have it that way, but just to start thinking about it. Because I think what I did when I was doing my career search is that I would come up with a position that I thought this is what I'm supposed to do next, and I would brainstorm what my ideal day would look like, and then I would look at what the position required, and then I would start to compromise and be like, well, actually maybe I do want to work this way, when really that's not even what I wanted. And so what I really want them to do is just really think about, do you like structure or do you like freedom? Do you like predictability? Do you like variety? And it's okay if you don't know if you want a mix of both, but just to start thinking about those things so that you don't end up just going down a path that you're supposed to do next without considering these things, because there might be some other options available to you. And there might be some situations where people might think, you know what, there's one thing about this job that I don't like. That's going to be my shit sandwich, but everything else really lines up. And my mission, like I'm so true to my mission that I can deal with this one thing that's not perfectly aligned. It just to really help them tease that out to make sure that they're making decisions for the right reason. And then really once they've done that, I want to help them to start thinking about, okay, what tangible things can I do right now to start building this portfolio of experience and start doing some test runs to just figure out which direction I'm going to go, which is exactly what I did.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. It makes so much sense. And I think like positioning yourself, you're kind of right between like, I'm just learning new tactical skills for the delivery of my services. And now I'm starting to go and formulate, or starting the process of going and finding my new career. You're kind of in between. You're like, okay, listen, before you go and do that, whether you're deciding to move into leadership, whether you're deciding to go back and do some more education, whether you want to start a private practice, whether there's some other kind of pathway for you.
Yeah.
Before you do that, let's do this foundational work first, because this is going to set you up, to be more clear on what that direction is going to be. B, to start building the relationships and influence that are going to help you kind of get there. Yeah. And C, to improve service delivery and to understand how to improve service delivery and find that right place for you. Because, I do the same thing with people in their businesses, right? We have to find the right business for you. We have to find the one that's uniquely designed to complement who you are as a person and your skills, whether they're like academically driven skills or tactical skills, or just like skills that are inherent in who you are as a person, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like this interesting sort of pre big move prep, which is going to help you like really, improve the work that you're doing already. So there's those immediate benefits, but also prepare you for your being in the best position to make that next move and being certain what that next move is going to be.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So when is the live event? It is 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
I have to look at my calendar. It is the week of September 19th.
19th.
That
right.
week. Yeah. So that's when it's going to go live. And it is going to be ongoing. So I'm going to be live. I'm going to be facilitating these discussions. And so obviously there's a big benefit to people who want to come hang out live and interact with me. But I will still be leaving it open after that. Tentatively speaking, unless, I realize that there's some major thing that I need to change. But yeah, I am planning on leaving it live so people can go through at their own pace. But, this is going to be the founders round of the program. So it's be to people's benefit to get in early.
Yeah. And so let's talk about that for a second, because we're flip-flopping between like, the clinical side, or like, the practitioner side, and then you as a business owner.
Yeah.
So this has been such an iterative process. And I think what's been really cool is, that we've both been taking this approach, which I really encourage everyone to take, that this can be iterative and we're continuing to learn. And so a lot of people get really upset when their results, their immediate results are not what they wanted them to be. But we've had to sort of train ourselves to be like, okay, cool. So the first email went out. What was the response? How did people like? And so we have data to look at to see, well, we had great open rates, not so great click through. What does that mean? Great. Yeah. Well, that gives us some information to start changing. And I think that that's like and I think this probably translates over to other professions as well, but that's like it's a huge maturity step for business owners to be able to say, to set their expectations that their first round out is not going to be like a slam dunk, right? Especially when they're building something that's pretty new and that has a new format and is kind of innovative. And so can you talk a little bit about shifting that mindset into like, okay, this is like, I have to grow this and I know it's possible, but it means that I'm just going to have to keep learning and watching and like being inquisitive rather than, spiraling into this is never going to work. Like a lot of people get there, right?
Yeah, it's frustrating because I have really worked on this for a long time. I think that I did often what I would often do, is that I would put it out there and it wouldn't work how I wanted. And instead of just sitting with it, I would pop onto something else.
Yeah.
So I think it's been really helpful to have some accountability and someone talking me off the ledge, telling, keeping me like, this time we're not doing that. We're going to make it work.
Yeah.
Because I think there's probably times where it's been so close, but ultimately I'm kind of glad, sometimes you look back on things and think, oh, that would have made my life so much easier if it just worked out then, but it wouldn't be the program that it's going to be if it worked out then. So I think maybe I just wasn't ready for whatever reason. I don't know, fate, and if you believe in all of that stuff, I don't know, but it is what it is. And we are where we are right now. And I tell people this all the time when I like clinicians in the business groups for clinicians, because we're all sort of like learning on our own because we didn't get business training as therapists. The whole concept which I got this from Russ Ruffino. I didn't come up with this on my own, but just bring the data, not the drama, where, a lot of people will be like, this person said this thing on my social media poster. I got a negative response from blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, people are like, oh, you need to take people's feedback. And of course you need to take people's qualitative feedback, but I start quantitative first because you look at the numbers don't lie. Like you could have gotten some negative comments, but if you had a lot of people sign up and a lot of people are happy with it, there's your answer. It's okay that somebody didn't like it over here or whatever. But I think with that, just again, the data, not the drama, the whole concept of just look at what's happening. You could be 99% of the way there, and it's just this one thing you need to fix, and you're going to throw it all out, all this work that you've done when you're just, what's the word, 5 feet from gold or whatever.
Yeah.
Like and I think I've probably done that a number of times. And what we uncovered this week was that my subject lines, people are opening them. They're interested in the topic. People who are actually going to the page are signing up for it, but we're working on the click-through rates because, and we just realized that what the promise was. Again, we're all up here with fluffy platitudes about being more empowered and stuff. And, that's not a new thing to say to a clinician. Everybody says that. It's like, am I going to feel empowered because you're selling me a worksheet? Am I going to feel more empowered because you're teaching me how to start a private practice? Am I going to feel empowered because you're giving me some chakra meditation thing that I can do? Like
self-care, Karen, self-care.
Yeah. All of that stuff, I think that it wasn't clear what it was.
Yeah. So, here's the way I look at it.
How we pair it with those types of things. And so we wouldn't have really realized where the things were not connecting if we hadn't looked at the numbers and done it objectively.
Here's what, like, where I come from with all of this. I've known you for a long time.
Mhm.
I've known how your business has evolved and how you've evolved as a business owner. And everything, like this program and the way it was designed, was the culmination of us going right back to square one and saying, okay, Karen, what do you want? Like, what is this? And this is the manifestation of what you want. So there's no going back.
Yeah.
There's no going back to something else, because this is what you want. So we're going to make it work. Right.
Yeah.
And we're going to make it work by trying, by learning, by looking, in different corners and asking questions and being curious. And the founders round, the first people to join this program, are the ones who are going to be there to give you feedback and to help you craft what this evolves into. But there's no going back.
Yeah.
Because this is super aligned with what you want and who you are, and it's going to evolve. It's the container you needed to start like evolving into, with all the things that were really, really like, that made you jazzed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's the process. And hopefully that's the same thing that your clients can go through. Not clients, they're members of the program, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're going to go through the same thing. That's the whole point of the program, is to be able to make that next move from a place of total confidence, because you know yourself, because you've built this foundation, because you've explored. And I think what was really cool about the story you told me yesterday about your own journey was that you just did all of these sort of micro experiments. And I think that's a cultural thing that you can build in and teach people, that I think people are a little bit unsure of or uncertain of, and they worry about the outcomes. But I think micro experimentation is like inherent in what you're doing as a business owner. It's what you've done to get here. And I think it's like a tactic that your members are going to really benefit from as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting. I didn't even know I was doing that at the time, but yeah.
And you're funny, because you say to me, I don't have any stories.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I probably have lots of stories.
You've got lots of stories, and stories are so like engaging, right? And people, every time I write something that is more of a narrative, people are like, oh, wow, this really connected with me. And so that's one of the things we're going to do, is start diving into like, what stories do you actually have to tell? And how can we talk about this concept from a perspective of story?
Yeah. I'm writing this down so I don't forget. That could be a podcast series, Karen's micro experiments, and I'll tell a new story every time.
Yeah, see? So I got to break it down. I think it's easy to get overwhelmed when you like, you're at a higher level and you're like, stories, I don't know. I don't have a lot of stories. I remember like I wrote a talk a few years ago, and I wanted to write this talk for like 6 months. And I didn't even know what it was going to be about. I sort of knew what it was going to be about, but I didn't really have like a clear topic. And I went to a writing retreat. I hadn't written anything. And the writing retreat was over a few days. And we weren't writing our talk. We were just writing stuff. Like, we would have a prompt, we'd write, we'd go through the process. Then on the last day, we were supposed to work on a project. And my project was going to be this talk. And we had like 2 hours to work on the project. And I just sat there and I was like, I don't know. And one of the coaches, she came in, she's like, just start spitting a bunch of stories out onto a bunch of Post-it notes and see what happens. And I was like, okay. And just these weird, random stories just came out. Like stuff from when I was a kid, and then stuff from when I was, working, and then all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden, I wrote the entire talk in half an hour.
Yeah.
And it was like TED Talk worthy. Like, it was good. And people were just like, because it was all narrative, but it all threaded together somehow, because subconsciously these stories were coming out, because in the back of my mind, they had some commonality, but I couldn't have told you that from the beginning.
Yeah.
Our stories are really the building blocks of the narrative of what we're creating. So that's going to be our next job, is to start pulling some of those out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of places where I sort of would go in one direction and then I would kind of hit a bump, hit something and then go another direction. And so that's that portion of the story. But for every one of those directions, I know somebody who did go fully in that direction that I could bring in to extend the story that I never really got to finish because I didn't go that route,
Yeah, I love that. I know you've got a bunch of different resources that you've got kind of lined up that can come in and sort of finish those stories. Oh, I love thinking about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so what have we got planned for the next week?
Oh man, so much stuff. Just plugging away. So now that I have some clarity on the live event and the promise, I am gonna get in and I need to get going on that copy. I have a lot of shitty first drafts. I need to make them good drafts and ready, send ready. So I need to do that. I need to really just add some. I don't even know if I'm going to get to that this week, but I need to kind of get the experience for the members that are going to be coming in. I need to do some prep work there as far as figuring out the topics and the discussions I'm going to be facilitating and just making it pretty because you did all that nice graphic design work for me. So I'm going to just do that sometime in the next week.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, maybe next week we'll come back and we're going to be talking about stories. We're going to be talking about what's come out of your, now you've got this clarity and like how that's made your copy evolve or what have you. Right. Yeah. I know I'm going to be working on some of your sales copy for the program itself, which feels like it's going to, come out a lot better now that we're a lot more clear.
Yeah.
And you know what? The other thing is that a lot of times, like I always encourage people to go on podcasts and be interviewed because when we're being interviewed, like if I go back and I listen to our show today, there's going to be a whole bunch of great stuff in there for the copy for the sales page. Because when we talk about our programs and the work that we're doing, a lot of stuff comes out that we actually have a hard time accessing when we're just trying to when we're being forced to turn it into something creative, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've got lots of work cut out for us. Any of you who are ever thinking of doing a launch, it's no joke.
Yeah.
I was just talking to another client of mine who's launching right now too. And she's like, I just met somebody who's a launch therapist. And I'm like, yeah, that's needed.
Real.
All right.
I'm tired, my brain is the writing. It's such labor intensive writing. I think I sat there with a piece of notebook paper and I'll just come back, realize I've been spacing out for 15 minutes or something, Yeah.
It's a lot of writing.
It is.
Yeah. And that's why launch copywriters get a lot of money. Because there's a lot of writing. I know for some of these multi-million-dollar launches that my friend works on, she'll be doing 60 to 70 emails for a launch, right?
Yeah, it's so much stuff.
Okay. All right. So we'll see you all next week. And thanks for being here with us. And Karen, get to work.
All right.